For the honor of Grayskull, I am... whatever this is. I look like maybe you ordered She-Ra off of Temu. Hello, Champagne Dreamers! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Janessa, and I'm North Dakota's Trash Queen of Glam, Geek, and Gore. And if you're new here, I don't know how you found me, but I hope you'll stick around, hit that subscribe button down below. I am very excited. Toy videos have actually been doing really well on my channel, which I love, because I love Golden Girl especially, and if you've watched any of the Golden Girl videos that I've done, I wasn't sure if anybody else was even going to know what I was talking about, and there's been such a fun community. I have put out my Barbie videos, and so now we're going to be talking about another toy line, but it's not quite as vintage as its inspiration. So if you want to see my MOTU Classics She-Ra collection, then stick around because we're getting into it right now. That's right, I have kind of a vintage She-Ra collection. I don't have as much She-Ra as I have Golden Girl. Golden Girl is the one that I have gone whole hog into, and I have a bunch of stuff. I have a few pieces for She-Ra. I have a lot of loose toys, and then I have a few things that are still in the package, or play sets or things like that. But I wanted to actually do a video about a really fun line that I think started in the early 2010s. I haven't really done that much research into it, so I don't really know exactly, but I know that it's like a lot of these I think are marked like 2015, 2017, 2019, and that is the Masters of the Universe Classics line. They have done a wide range of really cool reinterpretations of Masters of the Universe figures, and of course, She-Ra, our Princess of Power, is an offshoot of Masters of the Universe. She was introduced as He-Man's sister, and she got her own cartoon. And what I thought was really interesting, I talked about this in the Golden Girl video, part 1, which I'll link right here just in case you haven't seen it yet. But I think that that line really looks much more like the He-Man line than the She-Ra line ever did. The She-Ra figures, they're supposedly the same scale, but they seem much smaller. They're very petite, very small. You know, He-Man has that huge, ridiculous, big, broad-shouldered build and those tiny little waists, and then She-Ra is just petite and tiny. They don't look like they really fit in the same world at all. And Golden Girl was much more in that kind of vein, looked much more like the female figures from Masters of the Universe. And so I love She-Ra. I think it's very interesting and I think it's beautiful, but I love these Masters of the Universe Classics because what they've done is they've taken the old She-Ra characters and the She-Ra figures and they have recreated them in a larger scale. So the original He-Man, I believe, was a 5.5 inch scale. Golden Girl was done at a 6-inch scale because they were trying to avoid any sort of copyright issues and they were trying to differentiate it a little bit. She-Ra, like I said, is allegedly also 5.5 scale, but she looks closer to maybe like a 5. She's very small, very petite next to those. Now, these Masters of the Universe Classics, I'll put it on the screen, I'll look it up to see what it officially is. I would say that they are like 6.5, 7-inch scale. So these are a little bit bigger, but they've recreated a bunch of the He-Man characters and they've also created a bunch of She-Ra characters. And I have collected most of the line. So my MOTU Classics collection, unlike almost any collection or really anything in my life, feels very complete to me. There's a couple things that I'm still kind of looking for, but I really have all of the base characters for the She-Ra line that they did. So let's go ahead and take a look at these action figures. So here we have the original She-Ra design, and what I love about this is when we look at these action figures, we're gonna see that they really tried to stay true to the animation. And so some of the toys were closer to the animation than others. So we get a lot of the kind of beautiful design that you see on the She-Ra toy. These shields are absolutely what the toys look like, these little with the gems on them. And I just love this design. The She-Ra vintage line was very known for like soft goods. So like a lot of them had skirts that were fabric, shoulder pieces or capes that were fabric. The fashions were little snap-on fabric pieces. There's nothing that's really a soft good in this line. It's all done in plastic. So you will notice sometimes the skirts are a little weird on the toys just because they're a molded plastic piece that goes over the legs and all of it is pretty firm. The hair is pretty firm because the vintage She-Ra had rooted hair, but these are, you know, molded hair pieces on their heads. So it really captures the spirit, but it's got a little bit more of that He-Man all plastic kind of feel. She-Ra was really one of those things that at the time a lot of toy stores didn't even know where to put her. Do we put her in the action figures with He-Man and the other toys? Do we put her in with the dolls? I mean, it was the 80s, so anything that was mildly pink ended up in the girls aisle or whatever. But so this one really kind of is doing the all plastic, but it really captures the look of She-Ra from the cartoon, but it brings in a lot of the details from the vintage toy line. In the first run of the vintage She-Ra line, we also got Glimmer, who is She-Ra's best friend. She's part of the rebellion. Now this is where we can see this is very animation accurate. This is not accurate to the toy. The toy was much more of like an orchid, almost like the color of her hair, sort of purple with silver. So this is where we can see this is based on the animation style. It tries to bring in some of the pieces from the toy as well, but this line is very much about staying true to the animation, the comic books, that kind of source material. So this is Glimmer. And then we have Queen Angela, another one very much based on the animation, not the toy line. This is not what the toy looked like in the vintage line. This is very much what she looked like in the cartoon. You get her beautiful wings and just a gorgeous figure overall. Now, this was one of my favorite characters. I never had this particular figure in the vintage line. And this is one, again, this is very true to the animation. The animation was this blue with yellow. When they did Castaspella as a vintage toy, they did it all yellow. It was all yellow, but they do have her little spinning holographic backpack that was part of the vintage figure. Her little back piece that was kind of part of her magic that you could spin around. But it gives us that animation look where she's the blue with the yellow. So I really do like the yellow figure from the vintage toy line. I think this is cute. And I like that they're being animation accurate, but you see a lot of differences between what the vintage doll line was versus what they're doing with this new kind of all plastic, much more animation focused line. My other favorite from the first run of the She-Ra figures when the line first launched, Frosta. And this one is very much accurate to both the animation and the toy. Frosta had much less diversion. She was a little bit different. All of the She-Ra toys were a little bit different, but they stayed true to this blue color scheme, that whistling staff that she had that you could kind of blow over the top and it would make it spin and it would whistle. That's part of this. So I really love this. I just love the detail. Now this is another one. This skirt doesn't look too bad, but as we go through, you're going to see that a lot of the skirts look a little bit awkward, and we'll maybe include some photos just to kind of show you. In terms of if you are a collector who takes them out of the package and you maybe pose them in certain ways, some of the ones with skirts are going to be a little bit trickier. Now this one, I did love this figure because of course it's green. Anything green I'm immediately drawn to, but what I find interesting, if you notice down here, this figure is labeled as Double Mischief. This character in the cartoon is called Double Trouble. I'm going to see in the interim time, I mean, it always takes me forever to edit things, so I have a little bit more time for research, but I have tried to figure out why in this MOTU Classics they had to call this Double Mischief, and I just get sort of vague references to it's a copyright issue, but I don't know why it's a copyright issue, because if they have the copyright to all of the other characters, what is it about the name Double Trouble that they had to change? Because there's some sort of issue, because this figure was called Double Trouble, and in the cartoons and in the animation, the updated cartoon that came out on Netflix, that character has always been called Double Trouble, but in this line they called it Double Mischief. And she has the same feature where she has the head that kind of turns around and has an evil face and a good face. And if you've seen the new She-Ra, that one is really fabulous. I love that cartoon. I have a whole video all about it check that video out here if you haven't already seen it. But I love the new She-Ra, and the way that they did Double Trouble in the new cartoon is so good. I mean, it's such interesting, fun, non-binary representation. I really love it, and so this figure, I am very excited to have this, but I do want to find out more about why couldn't they call it Double Trouble? Because Double Mischief sounds stupid. I'm sorry. I know we are trying not to get sued out here in these streets, but it's just not the same. But of course, She-Ra didn't just have one line, and so as the toy line continued, there were more great figures, and more were added to the MOTU Classics line as well. So Perfuma, I think, was from the second range of dolls that came out in the vintage line, and for this one, again, they really tried to find a balance between the toy line and the animation. So the outfit, the look, is very much Perfuma from the original cartoon. However, the toy had this like gun backpack piece that had a flower that popped out of it. And it was, I think it was meant just to be the back piece on the toy. They actually turned it into a gun. So she has kind of this like flower gun, this big rose piece down here. And so they've tried to take elements from the dolls and add them in here. So this is Perfuma. I think she might have smelled like something maybe at some point. A lot of these are, you know, even though these are not the original vintage line, these are also vintage figures. I know we don't like to think of 2015 as vintage, but it is now 10 years ago. So this is a lesser vintage than the originals, but it's still vintage. So if she had a smell to her, sadly it's gone. It just smells like plastic. Another later in the range doll, this is Peekaboo. Again, we've gone with the animation look. This is not necessarily what she looked like in the vintage toy line. And so we've got this skirt, again, a molded plastic, and this has a long piece in front. So in terms of posability, definitely some issues there. But she has the back piece that kind of folds out like the vintage toy did. And she's got that beautiful, beautiful green hair. And then we have Sweet Bee. This is one that I have, the original doll. I think she was in the box when I got her, but I think the box was really damaged, so I think I took her out. You'll see that when we get to the vintage She-Ra video. That is coming, so all of the people who love vintage She-Ra, don't worry, we got you. But I do really love this figure, and I love what they did with her in this iteration as well. I think that her wings are very beautiful. I think they did a lot to kind of give her a beautiful animation accurate look, but also really kind of pay homage to the beautiful figure from the vintage toy line. Then we have Flutterina with these beautiful butterfly wings. She is one of the later figures in the line, and so she came out a little bit later. We've got this beautiful kind of look, very accurate to the animation, but really kind of a gorgeous fun. And they started doing different things with the skirts on these so that they were more posable. So you can see this one has the kind of little pieces that are kind of put together, so it's more posable. They heard the feedback, like Glimmer is just a big old block. Her skirt is definitely hard to work around, but for Flutterina, you get a little bit more action, a little bit more movement. Then we get to two of my favorites, and these are my favorites because I actually had these as a kid. So these were in my personal collection. I had two of the She-Ra collection. You know, I loved Masters of the Universe. I had a ton of Masters of the Universe. I had a couple She-Ra. I had animals that like held things. There was like a bone skeleton thing that held all the He-Man. I had the butterfly ship that She-Ra could ride on. And so it was just one of those things that there was so much of it, you just couldn't collect it all. But I was very excited that I managed to find both of these because my understanding is that these are a little bit rarer, or they were a little bit rarer at the time. Now, we're going to get to a couple figures later on that in the vintage toy line are super rare and are super expensive to find on the market. But let's get into the two that I had versions of when I was a kid. The first one is Entrapta, and her deal was she had really long, kind of twirled purple and pink hair. And what I loved about her is that she had that hair and she had this beautiful skirt, and her body was metallic gold. They did that a lot in the 80s. There were a lot of toy lines like Spectra, and there were the Skyhawks or the Silverhawks where they did the plastic in like a metallic finish. And for Entrapta, she had gold metallic plastic for her bodice and for her legs. So I really thought that was cool. And in the new She-Ra cartoon, I cannot say enough good things about that. I absolutely love it. And Entrapta is one of my favorite characters because what they did with her, she's typically an evil character in the canon, and for this new version, she wasn't necessarily evil. She wasn't trying to fight against the rebellion. She was just kind of misunderstood, and she just kind of found a place where she fit in and wasn't necessarily thinking about the ramifications of her actions. She was just so interested in science and experimentation, and she got caught up in the Horde. And so I really adore what they did with Entrapta. So good.
Wish I could be part of your world.
Oh, sorry, wrong mermaid. I was obsessed with mermaids as a kid, and the other She-Ra toy that I had was Mermista. So much fun. Now, the Mermista toy that you got, I'm going to put in a picture so you can see. She just, instead of having like a soft skirt, she just had a tail that pulled up over her legs. So the end of her tail was like blocky because her big chunky man feet were down at the bottom. And so this one, they decided we've got new technology, we've got new molding processes. So she's actually got interchangeable parts. She's got her little mermaid tail, and she also has a set of legs in the package. So you can have Mermista on land, Mermista in the sea, however you want to display her. And then we have another version of a Bubble Power She-Ra. This is very interesting. This is a version of She-Ra that came out towards the end of the toy line, and I'm going to link a video up here in the cards from Gady's Toys, and he talks a little bit about this figure. He does this series, MIA 80s Ladies, where he talks about action figure lines that were missing female figures from the 80s, because unfortunately, the 80s, there was maybe one token female action figure in each line. If you got two in a line, it was almost unheard of, and a lot of them just left their female characters out entirely. And so he talks about the fact that this Bubble Power She-Ra may have actually been the kind of idea for a different figure that never got released, because there were some plans and some concept art for this bubble carriage, and there was a figure that was going to come with it that, from documents from Mattel, she was going to be called Joya. And so I'll link his video so that you can watch that. His videos are really short and they're really interesting, so definitely check out Gady's Toys. I think they're a lot of fun. But he talked about the fact that Bubble Power She-Ra, there was some prototypes of all of her bubble stuff. Instead of being in pink, it was in blue. And then there were some plans and some notes and some concept art for this bubble carriage and a figure called Joya that would have had all this bubble stuff that Bubble Power She-Ra ended up. So when they realized the writing was on the wall and they were coming to the end of the toy line, they probably just gave all that stuff to a new version of She-Ra instead. So I never had that toy. I don't even remember seeing that toy in the store. Bubble Power She-Ra is not something that was like in my brain as something that I remember, but I thought, since they're doing a MOTU Classics figure, why not add her to the collection? I mentioned earlier that there were two dolls that came out late in She-Ra's production line that are now the rarest and most expensive, and those, of course, are Spinarella and Netossa. So this is Spinarella. This is where the no soft goods production really kind of shows some of its flaws, because obviously the vintage version of Spinarella came with a ribbon skirt because it's supposed to flow, it's supposed to move. Now, if you're just posing them and they're just kind of standing, I suppose it's fine, but she's got those ribbons on her sleeve pieces and they're just hard plastic. So that is a little bit... It's not great because it does just look like big chunks of plastic, and her skirt is just like overlapping chunks of plastic. So that's not great, but I do love the detail that they put into this. Again, I love the new She-Ra cartoon and what they did with Spinarella and Netossa. If you love a little bit of lesbian romance in your cartoons, the new She-Ra really is the blueprint for how to do interesting, fun, meaningful representation. It's so good. And Spinarella and Netossa kind of had their own episode in the original She-Ra cartoon, and they were like best friends. Girl. And so the new She-Ra cartoon really gives them the romance that they deserve. It's really beautiful. Spinarella is a little bit of plus-size representation as well, so I love that the new She-Ra cartoon has lots of body shapes and sizes. So this is a really fun one. I obviously had to get my two lesbian lovers in their MOTU Classics versions. And Netossa. This honestly is the toy that introduced me to MOTU Classic. It's what convinced me to collect this line because Netossa is the only black figure from the vintage She-Ra line. She was in the last wave that was released. She is so rare and hard to find. Netossa still in the package on eBay. The cheapest that I've found her often is like $700. And I often see her listed in the package at like $1,500. Out of the package, in fairly good condition, you're still going to run $300-400. So when I could get this one for like $30, I thought that was a much better deal than trying to find the original. I do love the original, and if I, by some miracle, can find even an out of the box that still has most or all the accessories that's in good condition, if I can find it for a decent price, none of this $300, $400, $500, $600, I would pick it up to add to my vintage She-Ra collection. But I was like, you know what? I can have all the characters that I love in these MOTU classics, and they're much more affordable. And what would the heroes be without some good villains? So let's talk about some Horde figures that I have. This is Catra. Obviously, if you see this, if you have seen the original vintage toy Catra, she's one of the ones that got the most radical change from the cartoon. And this is very animation accurate. Now this one, I don't know, this coloring on this suit, I think the plastic may have had a little bit of degradation or a little bit of something that's not quite right here. I need to look at some reference photos online because I think that this Catra maybe has gone through some things. I don't think she's exactly the way that MOTU Classics presented her, but I do love that she's in that original animation look. It's a little sad that they didn't do, for some of these where there's a big departure between the animation and the vintage toy line, it would be cool because they're doing so many figures. I mean, these MOTU Classics have done some deep cuts, like figures that have appeared in like one mini comic and shit like that. So I would love to see for some of these that have a little bit more of a departure, like a vintage toy inspired Catra would be very cool. But I do love her animation look. I think it's very cool. And so I need to just check and see if this coloring is off, and I might need to look for a replacement, but I really think that she's cool. And the Horde figures are pretty fun. Now this next figure I love so much. This featured in the original cartoon, and she did get 1 or 2 features in the updated She-Ra cartoon, and that is Octavia. Now, I have scoured to find more information on Octavia, because I swear in my addled crazy brain, I know that one time, because the Masters of the Universe line, typical 80s, that was the boy toy line, so they had very few female figures. They had Teela and Evil-Lyn, which were in the first and second waves respectively, and then later on they added the Sorceress, and that was it. But I remember going to KB Toys, remember that store, and seeing a Masters of the Universe and picking it up and turning it over, and on the back they would often preview new figure waves that were going to be coming. I swear I saw an Octavia figure. Now, I have never been able to find a picture. I've never been able to find a picture of the back of the card that would have shown that. I have found no concept art. I have found no evidence of this. All I have is my crazy brain telling me that I saw a Masters of the Universe figure in like 1987, but I was so keyed in on female action figures because they were so rare. I swear I remember that. So if anybody has any information, please, please leave it down below of how far they got. There's a lot of things that went to like prototype phase, and we're going to see something a little bit later on here that was a She-Ra prototype that never got produced, never got mass produced. So I would love to find out more about that, but I'm so excited that MOTU Classics did Octavia because I think she's so cool. Because I was into mermaids and like any kind of undersea, underwater. I mean, The Little Mermaid, as much as I loved Ariel, I was Team Ursula. Even back then, I love Ursula. I think she's so cool. The design is so fun. So this green octopus-looking character was always, always living rent-free in my mind. And another Horde figure is Scorpia. Now, I understand. I know. I hate Me Too. I am a broken record. I love the new She-Ra cartoon, and the character arc that they did with Scorpia is beautiful. It is so good. She has so many like sweet, heartbreaking moments. And I love that in that, any evil character, evil in quotes, any evil character got a chance for redemption at some point during that cartoon. If they really weren't like truly evil, dark kind of characters. And Scorpia's arc is so beautiful. So I love, now they changed her up a lot for that cartoon, but I love this design. This looks like the original vintage cartoon, so I love this look. So I love that we got Scorpia and Octavia. I love these sort of creature, you know, the princesses of power. It was the 80s. It was all about being very girly, very feminine. So those dolls, even when they had like wings or little things, it was always meant to be very pretty. And I loved that with the Horde, we got a couple of figures who are a little bit creepy. They're a little bit weird. We've got this scorpion lady and this octopus lady. So I loved that the Horde gave us some opportunity for some different kinds of representation. I loved it. I love how she looks, and I love the design. And she's still kind of sexy. She's got that cute little face, and I think it's great. So those are the main figures, but I do have a few more figures to round out the collection, like and such as Bo. I did decide to pick up Bo because he was part of the series. Who cares, right? Bo, he's not even like a hot man. I mean, I think he's kind of odd looking. He looked real odd in the original toy line. I just don't care that much about Bo, but he was such a part of the main series and the cartoon that I was like, you know what, I found a good deal on him. It was less than $30 and then shipping. So I decided to add him to the line, but I really do dig female action figures. That's what I'm into, because for so long it was so hard to find them. It was so hard to get decent, good female action figures. So, like, I guess there's a boy in this collection. Who gives a shit? But that's the only one that I have right now. We'll talk at the end about some figures that I'm still kind of looking at, but this is like the one bit of male representation. So, white cis men, you're welcome. Here you are represented in my toy collection. You're welcome. There are 2 action figures that I have. Honestly, I've mentioned it many times, but I bought them just because they are characters in the new She-Ra. Because their origin in the older She-Ra Masters of the Universe stuff, I don't care. I haven't watched it. I haven't seen it. The reason why I picked up these 2 figures is just because they are featured in the new She-Ra. The first one is Huntara. I do believe that she was in the She-Ra cartoon. I haven't watched all the way to the end of the She-Ra cartoon. I think there was like 60-some, maybe 70 episodes. And I loved it as a kid. But let's be real. In the 80s, cartoons, I mean, everybody knew that they were kind of just big commercials for toy lines. And they were trying to show you all the new figures and the new outfits and the new play sets and the new blah, 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 blah. And they were trying to get away with that because there were starting to be more laws around advertising to children. And so one way that they tried to be like, oh no, this is good, it's educational, is some of those 80s cartoons got real preachy. They had lots of messages about friendship and being nice to each other and brushing your teeth and not hiding in a refrigerator for some reason. Where my Punky Brewster fans at. So Huntara, she was in the cartoon, but I believe she was in a later episode, so I haven't seen it, or at least I haven't seen it as an adult. I may have seen it as a kid. But she was featured, and she was voiced by Gina Davis in the new She-Ra cartoon. Love Gina Davis, so we had to get Huntara. And we had to get Mara. So Mara, her genesis is in, I think, The New Adventures of He-Man. It was a later cartoon. I've never seen it. There were basically like 2 female characters. There was Mara, and then there was Krita. I have never seen it. I've seen Gatie's Toys, again, another shout out to Gatie's Toys, did an episode on The New Adventures of He-Man and Mara and Krita. Maybe a couple of episodes. I'll link whatever he did down below so you can check those out as well. But if you've seen the new She-Ra, you know that Mara is something that they pulled in to kind of beef up the She-Ra lore and the She-Ra mythology. And the way that they used this character I thought was brilliant. And they really kind of tied her together not only with She-Ra Adora, but with Madame Raz, who is kind of a quirky... The original cartoon also had like Lookie and Madame Raz and these kind of oddball characters, as 80s cartoons tend to do. Masters of the Universe had Orko. You know, there were always these kind of little weird sprite characters. Snarf from Thundercats. Really kind of there to be kind of comedic relief. And so Madame Raz is kind of forgettable in the original cartoon. She's not as important to the story, but the new cartoon uses Mara and Madame Raz to create this whole, like, oh, it's so good. I'm not going to give anything away. I usually don't care about spoilers, and I usually include everything, but I really want you to watch that series, so I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the way that they weave it together is brilliant. Just a few figures left. Now, I mentioned earlier that there were some toys that were just prototyped. They were never mass-produced. And they did a special 3-figure collection for one of those prototypes. So these did get through a full prototype stage. They were shown in some catalogs, but they were never mass-produced. And they are the Star Sisters. So these are really fun. These, like I said, were kind of a late addition. They were going to be part of the next wave. They were prototyped. They were shown at some toy shows, but they never got produced. So MOTU Classics made this fantastic 3-pack so you could finally get the Star Sisters. Now, in the new She-Ra cartoon, we're going to talk about it again. They have the Star Siblings, and they do it a little bit different. So, again, that cartoon, I cannot say enough good things about it. It's so good. But I'm so glad that they did this. That's what I mean by, like, deep cuts, is they're doing things that were never produced as toys. They're doing things that are just part of the lore. Some things never even made it into the prototype stage for some of these. So the MOTU Classics line, if you're a She-Ra fan or a He-Man fan, there's so much to discover of just really interesting figures. And these are some of my favorites. So I love this. It's a big chunker, but I love it. I have 2 figures left. And if you are a deep cut She-Ra fan, you're probably like, what 2 figures could they be? They're actually not She-Ra figures. I had to get my girls, Teela and Evil-Lyn. These were 2 of the first female action figures I ever had. Absolutely ignited that love for the female representation in toy lines. And I really loved their beautiful sculpting. Now, if you remember, and they've kind of carried it through here, when they created Teela, they created this beautiful kind of armor with all this detail. When they did Evil-Lyn, they used the exact same body mold. They changed the color. They made her skin yellow for some reason. And the only thing they did different was a head mold. That was the thing, is a lot of times in the 80s and through the 90s, maybe even into the early 2000s, if lines were going to give you female action figures, they reused molds so much. The X-Men figures are so notorious for this. You know, that was the thing in the 90s, the X-Men, so many of the female figures were in like jumpsuits with a weird frumpy leather bomber jacket. And so they would do figures using the same molds because all of them had some sort of jumpsuit with a bomber jacket, and then they would just mold new heads. Although sometimes they would also reuse the heads and just paint them differently. So I had to get these 2. I may get the Sorceress at some point. I also had the Sorceress figure as a kid. She was a later addition, and she was kind of an odd action figure. Her wings were kind of lame the way that they put them together. I felt like there was much more detail and attention and care given to these 2, so I absolutely had to add these to my collection. I love them.
I'm kinda new with apologies. Holding back, I got history. Yeah, yeah. But the way you've been crossing the line, oh, it's something in me that says it's fine. Hoping you wouldn't change me. Got the same old thoughts, be my referee. I will be alright. Never cut it right, but somehow you make me change. Like I'm better off with you. Like I'm better off with you. Kinda used to these battlegrounds where you flee, you don't stick around, no. But the way you've been giving me time,
Real name, Rebecca Kettle. What the fuck?
Never cut it right, but somehow you make me change. Like I'm better off with you. Like I'm better off with you. Hoping you wouldn't change me. Got the same old thoughts, be my referee. I will be alright. Never cut it right, but somehow you make me change. You make me wanna do better. I don't know why. You make me wanna do better. You make me wanna do better. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like I'm better off with like I'm better off with I've been working on myself. I really try my best to change, but sometimes in a love fade, right? Maybe we should stay in bed, pretend that everything's the same, just a little play pretend, right? But baby, we're changing. We can't really help it. We might just enjoy it now. We said forever, forever means nothing if we don't give it all we got. We can cry when it's over. 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 Really had a good run though, but maybe you would call me love. We will travel different roads from now. We said forever, forever means nothing if we don't give it all we got. We can cry when it's over. 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 I know it was special, but baby, you can't really stop it. Can't stop that heart from wanting what it was. I know it was special, but baby, you can't really stop it. Can't stop that heart from wanting what it was. We can cry when it's over. 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 Girl, I see your face everywhere. When I'm going out, you'll be there. 'Cause everything reminds me of you. I can't take no more. Girl, I think I'm losing my mind. Try to go to work, but I lost track of time. 'Cause everyone keep looking like you. I can't take no more.
All right, that is my MOTU Classics collection. And like I said in the beginning, that collection feels mostly complete. There are some things I could add to it. There is an Adora figure. So Adora, when she's not in her She-Ra gish, that's something that they do. They have her in her like Horde uniform where you can get Adora. They do have some other ones that are kind of deep cuts that I'm not as familiar with that I think are very interesting, like Despara. So Despara is sort of an alternate universe version of Adora where she never left the Horde and kind of became, I think, the leader of the Horde or one of the high generals. And she's this evil character and she's called Despara. They did a figure of that. You know, there's maybe the Sorceress. There's a couple versions of the Sorceress. They do this like all white, I think they call it like the Temple of Light version or something. And then there's the original blue and orange and white. What is that, Denver Broncos? I don't know what sports team. I don't know sports teams. But she kind of looks like a mascot for some kind of team. But they do that version of the Sorceress. I definitely want a Shadow Weaver. The only one that's really on my list of like, I still need to pick that up for this to feel really complete. Shadow Weaver. I love Shadow Weaver. Guess who's about to talk about the cartoon again? I loved what they did with Shadow Weaver in the new cartoon. Her arc is also very good. She's a very evil character, but she's much more connected to the other characters. And I love her new design. I think the way that they did it. Because the other one had this like Hershey Kisses like weird head hood thing that looked very odd. Like it just had that shape of like a Hershey's Kiss. It was very strange. So I love the way that they gave her like this creepy mask, but then you saw her hair. I love Shadow Weaver. Definitely going to have to add Shadow Weaver to the collection. Maybe Adora, maybe Despara. I don't really care about male figures, but I definitely would add maybe a Hordak. Sometimes if I see the right deal, because again, Hordak, I'm not going to chase that. I'm not going to spend a ton of money. None of these other figures, except maybe Shadow Weaver, none of them are triple-digit figures. I'd have to find the right, like $50 or under. I could be like, okay, Hordak. Okay, Adora. Shadow Weaver I would spend a little bit more because I really do like that character and I like the design. For the He-Man line, I'm not really interested in that, except I loved Merman. And I don't know how I never had Merman. He must have just never been in stock because I had a ton of He-Man. The He-Man is probably, I had a lot of G.I. Joe too. I just had a lot of toys. So I did pretty well. Don't think when I talk about how I didn't have certain toys as a kid, don't think that I was like starving for toys. I had a lot of He-Man, but I never had Merman. And I think it really just was that anytime I went to the store, he wasn't in stock. Because I loved that figure, and I was always on the lookout. But I had, like, really cool ones. I had Buzz Off, and I had the Snake Man. I had the Skeletor where you hit his chest, and it would show damage. It was a little, like, spinner thing in his chest, and it would get more and more damage the more you hit it with the sword. And so I had a lot of He-Man, but I just never had Merman. So maybe I would add a Merman. I thought Buzz Off is kind of a character that's styled after a bee. I would maybe add that to my collection. But again, I have pretty much the whole lineup of She-Ra. Once I have Shadow Weaver, I will feel like complete. And if I add a couple more, maybe. We'll see. Maybe there will be an update. Who knows? That is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for showing all of this toy love to my channel. There's definitely more coming. We have my vintage She-Ra collection that we're going to get into at some point. I'm sure there's more dolls that we're going to talk about. I've got a collection of Monster High dolls. I do have a small collection of Living Dead dolls. If you want to see that, let me know down in the comments if you want to see either of those lines. I am always looking around at different vintage Barbies, so we may have an update where I show you some more vintage Barbies that have come into my collection, but definitely vintage toys will continue to show up on the channel, and some newer toys. Like, these are not truly vintage, certainly not as old as the original She-Ra, but I love toys. I love just fun, plastic, colorful, interesting things. And if it hits that nostalgia just right, it's probably going to end up my collection, and then you'll probably see it on this channel. So be on the lookout. While you're leaving me those comments down below, don't forget to give me that thumbs up to tell me that you liked and appreciated this video. And if you are a fan of Adora and you can't believe that I'm not going to add that figure to my collection, you can just go ahead and give me that thumbs down. It's fine. It's okay. The algorithm isn't a picky bitch, and neither am I. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified every time I upload. I try really hard to have at least one video a week, and sometimes if you're very lucky, you might even get a bonus video? Ooh, for the honor of Grayskullrific! If you'd like to chat, banter, or commiserate between uploads, all of my social media will be linked down in the description box below, including a link to my website, The World of Champagne at JanessaJ.com. Thank you so much for watching. I love and appreciate all of you. I'm going to make sure the playlist is linked for all of my toy videos. If you haven't seen anything on Golden Girl or Barbie or the Cuties or any of that, definitely check it out. And until I see you again, bye. I talked about this in the Golden Girls video, the Volume 1.
You said Golden Girls.
Oh, yeah, the Golden Girls video.
Oh, sure.
But I could change it. I don't know why I had to dramatically oh.
So 10 years ago it would still be considered vintage?
Yeah. Because, I think for vintage fashion, anything that's 5 years old is considered vintage fashion.
Then, almost all my wardrobe is vintage.
Yeah. And, of course, we had to get Catra. Oh, no, we're not starting with Catra. Never mind. I mentioned earlier that they were prototyped. Pretty girl.
Who's the bird?
Who's the bird?
Yeah. I talked about all three ladies.
I don't know, some bird.
Who's that bird?
Hidden Beauty, bright and beautiful leader, lovely lookout. So her neck goes up. So she's
No
lookout.
way, does
Yeah.
it? Oh, God. Because I would think the bird would seem fitting to go with the lookout. Like the bird could somehow
Yeah.
be the eyes of it. But, okay. I can look at the back.
Glory bird.
Glory bird?
With her Starla, with her pet Glory bird, can sense danger and project spells of light against her foes. All right, so that is my MOTU. All right, so Nosferatu.